Hi everybody, it's Annette from The Art of Intuition, and today we're going to talk about access. Who has access? Why do we feel some people have more access than others, than we do? What defines access? So I'm going to let you in on a couple of, they're not even secrets, but a couple of things I've noticed as I have ascended my consciousness. The present is easy to tap into. Anyone who has any access at all can tap into what's going on with somebody in the present. And the reason for that is it's all in their field. And if they're really in their human realities, they don't clear their field quickly. Like they can have stuff, residuals in their field for years, decades, because humans don't clear their fields. They're around a lot of people, they're sleeping with different people, always sleeping with someone at night, they don't really clear their fields and they don't really work through or resolve anything. So a lot of that stuff just hangs in their field. So it's always been an easier ride in a sense. I don't know why that word came to mind, but it did, to tap into what's going on with somebody right now. A timeline that has occurred. This is getting a little gruesome, but like if I hear about someone missing or a dog missing or a person missing or something like that, I can, or someone committed suicide or whatever it is, I can tap into the timeline and go, what happened to that person? Is that person alive? Is that person dead? How did they die? It was kind of something I used to do years ago just to see if I could get the timeline. Sounds a little gruesome, but whatever would really come across, to see if I could hit the frequency of the timeline to see what really happened. Not looking up anything about anything, just to see what I could get on my own. This is kind of a good practice to do. You don't have to do it with the murder stuff, but do it with whatever. You can do it with sports games. I used to do that too. Though I will say it's easier once the game has been played. Like a lot of times I would not watch a game, go to bed in the morning, say, okay, who won? What was the score? And see what I would get on my own without looking at anything because it's already happened. It's easy to pinpoint that stuff. You don't have to have a massive expansion of consciousness to tap in on that. And that's why I say nothing we really do in the present, in a sense, is hidden from anybody. Even if someone doesn't know they have access, their subconscious picks up on our energetic field. So they're getting the information, whether they're getting it consciously or not. And that's really just the difference between being conscious and still being unconscious. When you're unconscious, everything's in your subconscious and you don't know you're picking it up, you don't know it's there. When you're conscious, you don't really have a subconscious anymore. Everything is conscious to you. You understand everything that's going on with yourself and, in a sense, with other people around you, because you can just tap into the frequency. It's easy. It becomes very easy. If I lose something, it's very easy for me to hit the energy where it is. Where did I leave that? You just have to hit the frequency. You just kind of, I used to call it, I can't remember what I used to call it. It was like a find me kind of game, like, where did I leave that? Hit the timeline again. It's not that hard. So if you start practicing that, you'll probably see you're pretty good at it. Picking up on the present is easy. A lot of people get stuff in the present, or what would be deemed as present, even though there's no time, when they're dreaming. They can pick up on somebody's upset. This is happening somewhere. It's a really strong thing in the collective. Like it was a really big football game. Sounds weird, but I dream about football games a lot. I would usually kind of see it when I'm sleeping. If a lot of people were watching it and excited about it, it just is the energetics of it. So you'll kind of be surprised at what you're picking up on and you don't realize it. Even if you have an urge to call someone, something might be going on with them and you just feel the urge to call them. So subconsciously you're picking up on it, but you haven't connected it enough yet. Your consciousness isn't there yet. And I always preference the yet. It's not there yet to kind of put together why. So that's pretty easy. When you go into things that have not materialized yet, when you go into that, air quote, the futures, what's going to happen, people might go to psychics, they go to tarot card readers, they go to anyone who might have more access than they think they do. But there's one important thing to understand when you do that. The person you're going to can only see the frequency they're at, their body is at, and down. They cannot see up. No one can see above their frequency. You just don't have the capacity to. Even if you can get a glimpse of it, you're not going to understand it. You don't have the information to understand. You don't understand how it all fits together yet. That's why things look easier in hindsight. Hindsight's always 2020, because no matter what your frequency is, you're always going to be higher than when you went through that thing. So when you look back at it now, you can see 100 reasons why it had to play out that way. Whereas when you're in it, you can't, because your frequency's of that. That's where that saying comes from. Same thing. At a certain level of consciousness, I can see all the consciousnesses below it, which means I can see all the timelines below that one and the one I'm in. But I can't see the ones above that. You can't really see up. You haven't tapped that yet. You haven't tapped into that yet. So when you go to a person and they're going to give you a future, a possible future, they can only see what they have the frequency to see, and they're only going to see the strongest one, which means the strongest frequency you're giving off, because there's a reason you went to this person. There's some frequency in you that matches that reader, or you wouldn't be there. There's some frequency match there, whether it's a disempowering frequency, whether it's empowering frequency, it doesn't really matter, but there's some frequency there that's matching you up. So they can tap into your strongest timeline. Doesn't mean it's going to happen. You can shift your frequency and you shift your timelines. That's why a lot of this stuff, when you get into it, it's a little more difficult to do. I always go back to predicting football games. It's not as easy to do as some people would think when you're doing it just on the reading the timeline, because the timelines change as the game goes on. I'm much better predicting what's going to happen when I'm watching the game and kind of locked into a game, what's going to happen next, based on the frequencies of the game, than trying to look at it beforehand. Unless it's a really strong timeline, I don't think it's going to shift. But a lot of times, some of those games shift. I'll see them shift 3 or 4 times before the games even start. So there are little games I used to play with myself on kind of seeing how things would go and testing to see how much I could see, what I was able to see. And don't dismiss what you get if someone else doesn't validate it. Because usually, some of us will go through that phase and want to tell people because we want the validation. You really don't need that. You're human needs that. You're picking up on something. I had a friend that had a tarot card reading once, and the reader picked up on a certain relationship she was in, and my friend was denying it, like, oh, I just lied and said I didn't know, because she didn't want to have to talk about that with the person. But you know, I'm sitting there laughing, and I'm like, well, that woman's like, well, I know you know that's you, because you know, we kind of know, even if you don't know yet. But that's why there's really not a point to it, unless someone's asking you to read them, to go through a lot of that stuff. Because some stuff people don't even know is there. If you had a certain frequency, you have access to stuff they don't even know that's there. We've gone through the whole thing about people lying to you and they don't realize they're lying because they don't realize it. It's stuff that's not conscious to them, but it might be conscious to you. But that doesn't mean someone has more access than you, in a sense. Just their frequency can pick up on certain things because their frequency is different than your frequency. So just keep that in mind. Don't ever really give your power away to a lot of that. What I will do is, now if I listen to stuff, you can also kind of see this play out with the collectives. People do a collective reading, and it can kind of hit on everyone in some way. Everyone's like, how does that work? Well, everyone's going to be somehow linked up to some collective. And if you're linked up to that collective, even though the energies might hit you a different way, it might be kind of minor to you and major to someone else, depending on where you are in your ascension process, where you are, if you've even had your awakening process yet. So it's going to be different for everybody. But some of the energies kind of always will be through a little bit. But don't ever think someone knows so much more than I do if whatever they're saying doesn't resonate with you. That's what's important. Does it resonate? Does it not resonate with you? If it doesn't, don't worry about it. And keep practicing the art of intuition.